So far we've been graphing absolute value equations. Now we're going to start solving them. At the end of this lesson you will be able to solve an absolute value equation. First of all, just kind of looking at when we're solving an absolute value equation, I'm going to start with an example. So let's say I have the absolute value of x equals 9, and we just want to figure out what answers would work. So most people can kind of just think, by thinking in their head, think, oh, x would equal 9. The only one thing is there's not only one answer, there are two answers, because also if I let x equal -9, when I take the absolute value of -9, I also get 9. So there are two answers. Okay, let's say if I have the absolute value of x is equal to 5, if I plug in 5, the absolute value of 5 is 5, but also if I plug in -5, the absolute value of -5 is also 5. So once again, there are two answers. And I'm going to show you, if I were to graph this, what it would look like. If I graph the absolute value of x, we learned from the previous lesson that it's going to look something like that. So we're going through 0, 0. And then if I graphed 9, that would actually be y equals 9, which is going to be, I'm going to go by 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 9. It's going to be a horizontal line through the y-axis. Notice that those two equations touch each other, those two graphs touch each other in two places. That's why we get two answers. There's two places where my y value is equal to 9. Same thing on this one. If I have the absolute value of x looks like this, and then y equals 5 looks like this, you'll notice there are two places where those graphs touch, so that's why there are two answers. Okay, this problem I'm actually going to change. Let's say I have the absolute value of x is equal to -3. Okay, so most of you, if I were to ask you to do this problem, you would think x is equal to 3 or x is equal to -3, but let's actually try those. If I put 3 in, the absolute value of 3 is 3. I do not get -3 like it says. And then if I put -3 in, the absolute value of -3 is also 3. I did not get -3. So pretty much when you take the absolute value of a number, it turns it into a positive value, so I cannot get a -3 ever for my answer. So this is going to be no solution. And I would just like to show you this one graphically. Again, if I have my absolute value, and then over on the right side I have y equals -3, so that would be down at -3, a horizontal line down at -3. Notice those two graphs are not ever going to touch each other. That's why there is no solution graphically. Okay, and I would like to do one more example. Let's say I have the absolute value of x is equal to 0, and mostly we can expect to get two answers, but sometimes we get no solution. And if I would look at this one, you think automatically x is going to equal 0, and since we don't have a -0, there really is only going to be just one answer. And once again, if I were to graph it, there's my absolute value of x for the left side, and then y equals 0 for the right side. It would just be, whoops, right over here. So notice the two graphs just touch in one place. That's why I just get one answer. But usually we can expect to get two answers, even though sometimes we will only get one answer or no solution. But most of the time we'll get two answers, because what I'm looking at, there are two numbers I can put into an absolute value and get the same answer. Okay. I can also look at the graph. Usually the two graphs will touch each other in two places. Some people also explain that this is basically a distance, and there are the distance from 0 on a number line, and there are two places where you'd be at that certain distance. So all those ways you can explain why that happens. All right, we're going to be looking at some problems where you don't just have the absolute value of x in the problem, because on most of the other ones, you could pretty much just guess and you can come up with the right thing. So let's put a 5 here and just see how we do. So this one says the absolute value of x minus 3 is equal to 5. Now, most people, if they were to try to just guess on this one, they would say, okay, x equals 8, because if I plug in 8, I get 5. And so from there, most people would just say, okay, then x is also equal to -8. But you'll notice if I plug -8 into here, I end up getting 11. So that's really not the best way to do it. So we're going to use this part up here, where the equation is equivalent to the statement ax plus b equals c, or ax plus b equals -c. Basically what we're going to do when the absolute value is isolated like this, we're going to write two equations. We're going to write x minus 3 equals 5, And our other equation is going to be x minus 3 equals negative 5, because we do know what's inside of the absolute value can either be positive or negative. And now since I have two equations, I can just go ahead and solve them. So add 3, I'll get x equals 8, which we already knew was an answer. And then if I add 3, my second answer is going to be negative 2. And notice they're not opposites of each other, and that's totally okay. All right, if I look at the next one, the absolute value of x plus 4 is equal to 3. What I'm going to do on this one, again, since my absolute value is isolated, I'm going to set up two equations. X plus 4 equals 3, and then x plus 4 equals negative 3. And then we'll just go ahead and solve it. I'll subtract 4 from both sides, so one of my answers will be negative 1. And on the second one, if I subtract 4 from both sides, I will get negative 7. All right, if we look at question number 6, let's put in 11 there. You'll notice this time we have some more things going on in the problem, but that's all right. What we're going to do, we need to get this absolute value isolated, so I need to get rid of the 3 and the minus 7, just like we usually do with any solving problems. So I'm going to start by adding 7. So I'm going to get 3 absolute value, 4x plus 2 is equal to 18. And then I need to get rid of the 3, so since that's right next to it, it means multiply, so to get rid of that I will divide both sides by 3. So now I have the absolute value of 4x plus 2 is equal to 6. Now that the absolute value is isolated, it's by itself, now I can write two equations. I'll have 4x plus 2 equals 6, and 4x plus 2 equals negative 6. And now it's just a matter of solving those two equations. On this one, I'll subtract 2, so I'll get 4x equals 4. Then I'll divide by 4, and I get x equals 1. On this one, I'll subtract 2 from both sides, so I get 4x equals negative 8, and then I'll divide both sides by 4, and this time I get x equals negative 2. Okay, let's try another one here. We'll put a negative, no, I don't want to put a negative 15 there. Let's put a 13 there. That will work nicely. Okay, so if I put a 13 here, same thing again, I want to get these absolute value signs just by themselves. So I need to get rid of the 4 and the 7. So first thing I'm going to do is add 7 to both sides. So I'll get 4 absolute value x plus 8 is equal to 20. And then the next step that I'd like to do is to divide both sides by 4. So I'll get the absolute value of x plus 8 is equal to 5. And then from here, now that I have the absolute value isolated, we get two equations. X plus 8 equals 5, and x plus 8 equals negative 5. And then from here, subtract 8, I get x equals negative 3. And on this one, if I subtract 8, I will get x equals negative 13. All right, let's try one more. We have 3 absolute value x plus 7, and let's put equals 21 here. If you'd like to try this yourself, go ahead and pause me for a little bit and try it and come back and see how you do. All right, we need to get the absolute value isolated, so to get rid of this 3, we're going to divide both sides by 3, and then we'll get absolute value of x plus 7 is equal to 7. And now that the absolute value is isolated, we have two equations. We have x plus 7 equals 7, and we have x plus 7 equals negative 7. So now solving this, I'll subtract 7. So one of my answers will be 0. And if I subtract 7 on the other side, my other answer will be negative 14. So those would be my two answers. So hopefully now you can solve an absolute value equation.